All right, we are going to be doing some solving of quadratic equations, and today we are going to be using what is called the square root method. Having just come out of our chapter of simplifying square roots, we'll be using that information and then applying that to a quadratic equation. Now, first thing I have is if I gave you this question, what is the square root of 4? And the square root of 4 is equal to 2 because 2 times 2 equals 4. Okay? Now, if I were to ask you x squared equals 4, so in other words, what number times itself is 4, the answer is both a 2 and negative 2. The way that we write that is we put a plus or minus with our number. So when we solve a quadratic equation, remember what we are finding are the x-intercepts of the graph. And when we have a quadratic equation, and we're going to use the square root method, remember that it is going to insert a plus or minus into that equation. Now, there are three different types of solutions that we're going to be looking at. The first one is you're going to get a two solution answer. And what that would be is the radicand is a positive number, a positive number. You could also get a one solution where the radicand is 0. And then you could get no real solutions because the radicand is a negative number. Now remember, if you're getting two solutions, what that means is that your graph of your parabola would be crossing in two different points. If you got a one solution answer, what that would mean is that your graph is coming down, touching, and going back up. It's crossing the y-axis in one exact point. If you get no real solutions, what that means is your graph is either completely above it or completely below it. It is not crossing the x-axis at all. So there are three types of solutions that we can get when solving a quadratic equation. Now, the square root method, what we simply do is we start off and we say, okay, isolate what is being squared on one side of the equation. So if I were to look at these examples here, what is being squared in this first one? And the answer would be x, x squared. The 5 is not. So the first step we would do is we would divide both sides by 5, and that would get me x squared is equal to 5. And then I would continue to solve it, but that's how I would eliminate it. In the second one, I look, the x again is what is being squared, so I would take and I'd add 4 to both sides, and I'd get x squared is equal to 12. Now, on this third one, when I look at this one, what is being squared is this entire grouping. That grouping of x minus 3 is the base here. So we would take that and we would divide both sides by 4, and that would leave us with the grouping being squared isolated from the rest. Okay, so that's going to be step number 1. We have to get what is being squared on one side of the equation by itself. Then what we do is we undo the squaring by taking the square root of both sides. Don't forget, this will introduce that plus or minus into our problem. And then what we simply do is solve the remaining equation if needed. All right, so what we're going to do now is let's try a couple. So we start here at number 1. It says x squared is equal to 36. My x is already isolated, so I'm going to take the square root of both of those. And that would give me x is equal to plus or minus 6. And that would be our solution. Okay, let's try number 2 here. If we notice, number 2, the thing that is being squared is just the x, so I need to get rid of that 5 first. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and that would get me x squared is equal to 4. Then I would take the square root of both, and x would equal plus or minus 2. And that would be our solution. Here on the third one, we start off, the thing that is being squared is x, So we need to isolate it. So I'm going to start off by minusing 8 from both sides. So I'm going to start off by minusing 8 from both sides. That would give me 2x squared is equal to a negative 4. Then at that, I would take and divide by 2. So x squared is equal to a negative 2. We take the square root of that. Now, here is where we have a problem. Notice there is a negative inside the radical. So what we would say on this problem, because we cannot take the square root of a negative number, we would say this problem is no real solution. It does have a solution, it's just not part of the real number system. Okay, and that is for a later topic, but just know there is a solution, it's just not part of the real number system. Okay, let's try this fourth one here. So we're going to start in here. I'm going to add my 12 to both sides. And that's going to get me 2x squared equals 66. Then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So x squared is equal to 33. Take the square root of both sides. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 33. And then at that, we're going to take and we're going to find the decimal as well, because it did not come out to be a perfect whole number. And we would just simply type that in, square root of 33, and that's going to give us 5.74. So we're just going to go 5.7 approximately, and there would be our answer. Okay, those are the types of problems that you're going to see on day 1. Now, if we take a look at day 2, what you start to notice is that there's other things that are being squared besides just an x. So on this first one, if you notice, we've got the grouping x minus 4 squared equals 36. So what I'm now going to do, it's isolated. So I'm going to take and I'm going to go the square root of both sides, which is going to give me x minus 4 equals plus or minus 6. Now, I need to solve the rest of this equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 4 to this. Remember, right here, you have two different solutions. You have a positive 6 and a negative 6. So my two answers are going to be 4 plus 6, which is 10. And it's also going to be 4 minus 6, which is negative 2. And those would be our two solutions that when we plug that in are going to give me 36 back. Okay, let's try another one. So if I look at this problem, I'm going to start off. I need to get my thing that is being squared by itself, so I'm going to add 24 to both sides. So now I have the grouping x plus 7 squared, and that is equal to 144. At that now, we take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to get x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus 12. Now we're going to take that and we continue to solve. So I'm going to minus 7 from both of those. Now remember, this gives me a positive 12 and a negative 12. So here are my two solutions. I have x equals negative 7 plus 12, which is 5, and I have x equals negative 7 minus 12, which is negative 19. And both of those work. If you want to check them, you're welcome to it. You just go 5 plus 7, which is 12. 12 squared is 144, minus 24 would be 120. If you plug negative 19 in, you get negative 19 plus 7 is negative 12. Negative 12 squared is 144 minus 24 equals 120. So just know that's how we handle that positive and negative piece that is going along through the problem here. Okay, so let's try just a couple more. We're going to start here at number 7. So we look, I need to isolate it, so I'm going to divide by 3 to both sides. So that's going to get me the grouping x plus 1 squared, and that is equal to 9. With that then, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So that would give me x plus 1 equals plus or minus 3. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to subtract 1 from both. So I get x equals -1 plus 3, which is 2, and x equals -1 minus 3, which is -4. Check them. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 squared is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. That one works perfect. Try the -4. -4 plus 1 is -3. Squared is 9. 9 times 3, 27. So those would both be our solutions there. Okay, let's try a couple more here. We're going to start off. Nothing there to simplify, so I'm just going to take and do the square root of both sides. So we'd have x over 3 minus 5 equals plus or minus 4. Now, what I like to do in this problem is I like to split it up. So let's just go x over 3 minus 5 equals positive 4, or x over 3 minus 5 equals -4. Then at this, we add our 5 to both sides. So we get x over 3 equals 9, multiply by 3. So x would equal 27. That's one of them. And then over here, we would add our 5 to both sides. And that's going to get me x over 3 equals 1 times 3 to both. And that gives me x equals 3. So my two answers would be 27 and 3. And if you plug those back in, 27 divided by 3 is 9. 9 minus 5 is 4. 4 squared is 16. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Minus 5 is -4. -4 squared is also 16. Okay? And then these last two, let's just try a couple more here. So we're going to start off here. We're going to start, and the first thing I notice is it's already isolated. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So that's going to get me x minus 8 equal to plus or minus the square root of 10. Then I'm going to look and I'm going to say, can the square root of 10 be simplified at all? Does it have any perfect square factors? Can it be simplified? And the answer would be no. So then I need to move the 8. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And that's going to leave me x equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 10. And that is where I would leave that. Then I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to get two decimal answers. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do 8 plus the square root of 10. And that's going to get us 11.2. When I round, it comes out 11.16. The 6 is going to round. And then I come back and I do the same thing, but I do it with the minus. So 8 minus the square root of 10, and that's going to give me 4.83. The 3 keeps it at 4.8. And that's how we do that process if it doesn't come out to be a whole. Okay, let's try number 10 here. So on number 10, I'm going to start in, and I need to isolate here a little bit. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to add my 8 to both sides. So that's going to give me 2x plus 3 squared, and that equals 15. I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that's going to get me 2x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 15. Then at that, I'm going to minus 3 from both sides. So that would end up getting me 2x is equal to -3 plus or minus the square root of 15. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to divide everything by 2. So my exact answer would be -3 plus or minus the square root of 15 all over 2. Then I'm going to take my calculator, and now I'm going to punch in my two approximate answers. Now, when you're punching these in, What I recommend is find the answer for the numerator and then take that and divide it by 2. So we're going to go -3 plus second x squared 15, press equals. And that comes out to be 0.872983346. And then just hit divide 2, and we get 0.436. So we're going to call that 4. Let's just go 2 decimals this time. We'll go 0.44. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing again. -3 minus second square root of 15. And that's -6.872. Then we take that, divide that by 2, and we end up getting -3.44. And those would be our two approximates. And that's how we solve a quadratic using the square root method.